that. I'm always happy to be here in your den here, your man cave.
It definitely is. And you brought a special guest, did you not?
I did. Every year I always look for a new young talent to be in my show down at the old church. And I was over the summer, I was asked to be the narrator for the very famous orchestra piece with narration, Peter and the Wolf. And so I narrated, and along with the orchestra down on the waterfront in Lake Oswego last summer, and it also I know if you're familiar with Three Lake Torso, pretty well known band. They were also performing with the orchestra, and they had a special guest, a young girl, 16-year-old girl from Lake Oswego. She goes to Lake Ridge High School, and she's a great singer, great jazz singer. And then she pulled out her trombone and played this incredible jazz solo with Three Lake Torso and the orchestra. And then when it was done, I walked up to her and introduced myself. I said, I have a show coming up, and I'd really love to talk to you about maybe participating. And so she's already performed with us. We did our Christmas show at the Reeser in Beaverton over Thanksgiving weekend, and the crowd went crazy. And so she's going to be with us at the old church as well. I brought her here today, and because she's just a really cool young person.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Elena Stepler is in studio. Elena, welcome. It's great to see
Thank
you.
you for having me. Thank you, Michael.
That's so great. So you hadn't met her or knew her until you saw her performance?
No. Yeah, she just blew me away. When you hear a young person play like an adult professional, it's magic.
I asked you
Yeah.
if you recognized that type of talent, and you said it took a couple of seconds.
It's just, yeah, it's a couple seconds, and you go, oh, yeah, that's special.
Elena, that's
Yeah.
got to be kind of warming to hear that from someone like Michael, I would guess.
It's just really been an honor to be able to play with his group. It was such a fantastic experience, and they're all so talented.
How much fun did you have at the show that you did for the Thanksgiving show at Reeser?
Oh, I had so much fun. The whole cast was so talented. It was such an amazing opportunity.
That's great. So you go to Lake Ridge High School?
Yes, I do.
And how long have you been playing music? When did you start?
I started playing music and singing. I mean, as soon as I could talk, I started singing, but I started playing the trombone in about second grade.
That's awesome. So which do you prefer, singing or playing instruments?
I love a little mixture of both.
How does that sound, Michael?
It's apparent. It really is, because I can tell she loves singing, and she lights up. When I saw her sing, and then of course you can't see her smile when she's blowing on a trombone, but you can see it in her eyes and her body language, and the thing that sets her apart from other young musicians at the same age. Not only is she academically up to par, but there's a certain thing that happens with the way you phrase things, the way you think about things, and the most important thing is how you listen to others when you're playing with an ensemble. And she does that naturally, because I've played with, some great players, and you can tell that they're just listening to themselves.
How do you develop that skill? Is that something you're born with, or how do you develop that over time to be able to listen to the people you're playing with in an ensemble?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Something you were born with, and you understand it, and it's just something that's natural. And then I think for other folks, it needs to be pointed out to them, and you can help them get there. And it is important to listen to yourself, but you have to let go of that part of your ego, and you have to shift into everybody that's involved. Because when everyone's listening to each other, then you could become one as a group, rather than, three guys who are dialed in and then one guy is just kind of like not really listening. And when that happens for me, it's the wince factor. It's just like, oh God.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's probably it's the same thing in sports, right?
Yeah, I was just thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. A team where basketball, for example, you and I are both big Trailblazer fans.
Yeah.
5 guys on the floor have to be able to come together to play the best basketball. And if you've got egos or anything else that's preventing that type of communication, teammates being able to listen and
Yeah.
hear one another,
Mhm.
you can stop the flow of what it takes to be a great team, obviously.
Absolutely, and having that awareness and, you know, I hear you guys talk about this all the time, you know, about the chemistry, you know, all that kind of stuff that needs to be on a team, and, you know, you know, recognizing that, okay, so and so is hot right now, let's get him the ball,
Yeah.
you know, and that's being a good teammate,
Yes.
you know, rather than, well, so and so is hogging the ball now, but it's like it's being aware, and then, you know, and if that particular, you know, player's on fire, yeah, get it to him until he's not on fire, and then just stop, you know, just distribute around, you know. So yeah, it's the same thing.
All right. How many years now? Christmas at the old church.
This is my 35th season.
Wow.
So my first year there, I was 31 years old. So
Wow.
it's easy to do the math. I'm 66 years old now. I have no idea how that happened.
And you never imagined
Yeah.
it going for 35 years, did you?
No, and I know I'm, you know, I'm scheduled to be there for the next 20. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have it reserved. We have it locked in. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's pretty great.
No, I think it's
Yeah.
terrific. And what I like about your shows is that you've always gone out of your way to include younger students, people like Elena, to come in and
Mhm.
perform and be a part of that. And so, what I think, and I was thinking about this last year when you were in, you're creating a legacy because of all the other people that have a chance to perform and be a part of Christmas at the old church, which is special for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah, so many people have made a tradition year after year, and just, you know, it really is. It's a family show. We have such a variety of music. You know, some of it is Christmas jazz, some of it is Christmas classical, Christmas pop. I mean, and you know, and what's really great is that some of the greatest music in the world that's been written is for this season. You know, and we get to play it, we get to share it,
Yes.
and everybody gets to enjoy it together. So that's really what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people,
Yeah.
you've talked about this, but I think Christmas at the old church, what's happened because it's been here for so long, this going into the 35th year, families have made your show and what you do in your life a part of their family tradition, which is what makes it special.
Yeah, and I am so surprised by that. I had no idea that starting this show 35 years ago that would happen, where it becomes, you know, one of the icons of the city. You know, you know, we have the Nutcracker, and you know, we have the singing Christmas tree, and we have gospel Christmas. I mean, there's some things that have been around for a long time that become established traditions and part of the culture, you know, of the city. And one of those is my show at the old church. And gosh, I'm really proud of that. And I'm hoping, you know, I'll probably do it for another 20, 25 years. I'm really hoping that when I'm done being at the helm, that a lot of these, you know, talented artists that have been a part of this show carry it on and keep the tradition going.
Now, with your
Yeah.
planning for each year for the show, I know that there's got to be certain staples you want to keep a part of the program. But how do you know what new songs or different things you want to add into the show each year? How do you go about that process?
Well, a lot of it just comes naturally, like meeting Elena, you know. So, you know, so we got together. I said, "What would you like to do?" And she said, "Well, I'd like to sing 'Let It Snow, Let It Snow,'" and we haven't done that in the show for a long time. And
Is that one of your favorite songs, Elena?
Yes.
Is that your favorite Christmas song?
I'd say one of my favorite, yes.
That's great.
yeah,
So you ask her what she wants to do, and she gives you
yeah,
her ideas.
absolutely. And then I told her about some of our traditions. Like, for instance, if we don't do the Charlie Brown Christmas segment,
That would be a problem.
it would be a problem. I'll get an email. Somebody will call me. How come you didn't do Charlie Brown? I look forward to it every year. It's like when Julianne sings "Oh Holy Night."
Yeah, you got to have that.
Got to have that. Yeah, and she also sings "Mary, Did You Know?" If we don't include that, we hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then our drummer boy segment, you know, with Israel Ano, master drummer.
Amazing.
If we don't give him his big, solo, if he doesn't do his drum solo, is Israel okay? Is he feeling all right? You know, how come he didn't do his solo this year? So yeah, so there's probably 8 segments in the show that we do every year. And then there's probably 6 to 8 segments that are new and fresh. Yeah.
So, Elena, how are you adjusting to performing? How do you enjoy performing in front of a live audience where you're getting the live feedback?
It's always so much fun to get live feedback from the audience. The Reser was a really, really special performance hall, and I'm very excited about the old church, too. It sounds really magnificent.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. So you haven't performed in the old church yet?
No, I haven't, no.
Well, that would be a thrill for her because you've always talked about how it's a magical venue.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, the acoustics, the way it's laid out, there's not a bad seat in the house, and the other thing is the expectation that we have during the holidays that we want to uh, participate in things we want to feel something, we want to see and feel something. Like just going to the zoo lights. I mean, for a lot of kids, it's so exciting and getting an elephant ear. So there's certain things during this holiday period that means something to us. We want to feel something. We we think that this or we think or we know that this time in our culture, on this planet, it's a special time where we really focus, on fellowship and goodwill and love. And so when you come to a show like the old church with the kind of music that we do, there's an expectation of feeling something special, and so that's what we're hoping that happens. I mean, us as performers, we just don't want to play. We also want to feel something too. So when we all get to feel something together, then mission accomplished, and our souls will get filled. The way that we're hoping for.
That's awesome. All right,
Yeah.
why don't we do this? Let's take a quick break,
Yeah.
and then we'll come back, and you guys can
We'll do a
give us
tune.
some music. You want to do it? All right, we'll come
Yeah.
back, and we're going to have Michael Allen Harrison and Elena Stupler perform and get ready for Christmas at the Old Church, and we'll get details on how you can get tickets for that show. I think the first one's coming up on December 13th. Is that correct?
And we run all the way through Christmas Eve. 18 shows this year.
18 shows. So you got to make sure you get a part of the action. It's a beautiful show at the Old Church. More from Michael Allen Harrison and Elena Stupler when we come back on the Rip City Drive.
Great.
All right, Christmas at the Old Church. For your tickets and information, just go to michaelallenharrison.com. The first show of 18 is coming up on December 13th. And right now, Michael Allen Harrison and Elena Stupler is in studio. And I was mispronouncing her name, but I got it. She said up. And I was like, okay, Stupler. So we got it now. So it's great to have you guys in studio. So you guys are going to do a little bit of music, a little sampling of what we're going to see at the show. So why don't you walk us through this, Michael? What you got?
Yeah, well, this is, one of those iconic songs, like Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. That was, kind of written during a certain, era. And this is Let It Snow it was written by two of the great songwriters of that time, Sammy Kahn and Jules Stein. And they were like, if you've heard of Gershwin and Cole Porter, they were all from that era, and Rodgers and Hammerstein. And so all that great music, the traditional stuff coming out of the 30s and 40s were written by those cool guys. And it's so cool that a lot of young people like learning this old traditional music. And I think that's one of the things that Christmas does, because it has such a variety, of genres and also, different eras.
So great
You
for
know?
young artists like Elena to learn this stuff. Then.
Absolutely. So here's Let It Snow, Let It Snow.
Weather outside is frightful, but that fire is so delightful. Since we no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. No, it doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, though I hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, oh, all the way home I'll be warm. Oh, that fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. As long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we finally kiss goodnight, though I hate going out in the storm. But if you really hold me tight, oh, all the way home I'll be warm. That fire is slowly dying, and my dear, we're still goodbying. Oh, as long as you love me so, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
All right, nice work. That was beautiful.
Yeah, isn't that great?
Yes, Elena,
Yeah.
nice work.
Thank you.
I can see why you enjoy singing that song. That's a fun one right there.
It's a very fun one.
It really swings.
It does swing.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. And your voice, wow. You're
Thank
right,
you.
Michael. Star, big time.
I think so. I think I also, there are a lot of good voices, and there are a lot of great voices. I think she's in the great department, also because I think her voice is really recordable. I think she would be really good on recordings.
Excellent.
Yeah, I really do. I think you've got a really nice, life ahead of you in career. You're going to be you're going to be out there sharing your gift for many, many years and having a lot of fun and making a lot of people happy.
It means so much. Thank you.
You bet.
So, Elena, what are your dreams and goals with music? Like, what have you envisioned yourself doing?
I love to sing. I also love to compose music. So I would love for my future to combine the both. I also love songwriting. So I just love listening and playing all different styles of music. So I see myself blending genres together and performing also.
Now, have you written your own songs already?
Yes, I have.
That's great. What's that process like for you?
For composition, I usually always start at the piano to get my ideas, and then I input either like a melody or harmony or rhythm ideas I have on the computer, and then from there I go on to orchestrate it. And I really see the orchestra as a canvas of colors, and using like the high woodwinds and the flutes and the piccolos as one color, and then the heavy brass. There's just such a open palette of possibilities.
And then how do your lyric ideas come up?
I really use my songwriting as a musical diary, so just any feelings or moments I have, I like to journal and make those into lyrics.
Yeah, that's what it's all about when
Yeah.
you're a young, young storyteller.
Yeah.
You're telling stories of who you are at that time in your life.
What
you
was
know?
your songwriting process
Yeah.
like when you were younger?
Oh
Did you keep
my
a journal?
goodness.
I mean, what was that process like? I'm
You know,
fascinated
for
by the creative
me,
process.
for me, it's always a spontaneous combustion because I never was somebody who journaled and that kind of thing, and so I always felt like I was always walking around. I was like a walking radio receiver, and all of a sudden, the dials get like tuned into like a certain frequency, and all of a sudden, all these ideas just dump down on me, and then fortunately, I have access to a piano all the time, and so most of my early compositions was solo piano, and um, and then I started doing a few things for jazz. But in college, I did a lot of orchestration. Um, but mostly piano when I was a kid, and I did most of my big composing at Parkrose High School. So my choir director, her name was Lorace Finley. She recognized my talent, and they had a Steinway on their stage, a 7-foot grand Steinway. It was a beautiful instrument, and the only person who had the key to that Steinway was Mrs. Finley. And so after sophomore year, when I came in as a junior with first day in class, she handed me the key to the piano. And so
That's a big deal.
it was a huge deal. And so, it was covered and in a cage, in the corner on the stage. And so that was my domain at lunch and after school every day, you know. And, they had a soundproof curtain, so even when lunch is going on, because it was a cafeteria stage back in those days,
Uh-huh.
you really couldn't hear me back there. So I had my own domain, and I was shy about sharing, what I was creating, and I wasn't as bold as Elena, So I was kind of in my secret world for a long time until I got into college, and then I gained more and more confidence and I got invited to be part of the Composers Club at Portland State University with Tom Svoboda and Eric Funk. And every Wednesday night, all us composers would get together, and then they would give us assignments. So this is before computers, so we had to write it all out by hand. Okay, and so a lot of it you have to think of it in your head, and so there's a lot of ear training that we went through, and so a lot of my writing, was just like singing it in my head and what it would sound like. And then so they would give us an assignment and say, okay, we're going to do a woodwind quartet. I want, write a woodwind quartet, like a 4-minute piece in the style of this period of music. And next week we will have those instruments there for you. And so we would hand in our compositions, and then they had professional musicians that would play our compositions for us. It was so cool.
That is awesome.
Really great.
Yeah.
Now, what
Yeah.
about for you, Elena? Who was the main influence on you when you were younger that really sparked your interest in music? Was it your mom or dad or a family member or a friend? Like, when did that start for you?
My parents always exposed me to a lot of different styles of music when I was younger. Neither of them play instruments, but we would always have music constantly playing around the house, whether it be jazz or classical or musicals, and I think that really shaped my love of music.
Did you have that experience too, Michael, where you were exposed to certain
Oh
forms of
my
music?
God, yeah. My parents had really eclectic taste. I mean, they had a lot of classical albums, but then they had a lot. Back in those days, it was really the big folk period. So it was Bob Dylan and the Mamas and the Papas and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. And but then it was also Barbara Streisand, and then there was this really cool record uh, by a guy who did it was the early synthesizers, and it was called Switched On Bach. So it was pure Bach played on synthesizers.
That's
And
so
that was
cool.
one of my favorite albums. It was a huge, huge album. But they were listening to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. They were listening to Tower of Power. I mean, it was the Stones, the Beatles, a lot of Beatles. So that's what I was really exposed to, and also a lot of musicals. So we had the West Side Story album at our house, and
It's a great
we had
album.
The Sound of Music, all that. Mary Poppins. I mean, I grew up with all that stuff. Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting. Now, didn't you come out with didn't you have an album? Was that you that had it was like your take on some of the hard rock classics?
I did. Gosh.
What was it called? It was like light rock?
Well, it was called Heavy Mellow.
Yeah, Heavy
Oh.
Mellow.
It was
Yes.
called Heavy Mellow. And
I
it
love your
was,
interpretation of
yeah,
it, the way
it
you
was
played it.
all like, lights out, mellow interpretations of classic rock. So,
Yes.
I did like Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
I did Inagata Davida. In a dreamy way.
That's awesome.
So all the songs just had that just mellow, kind of really slow, dreamy feel to it. I did Hotel California. I did that in the style of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata.
How much did you enjoy
Yeah.
doing that? Putting
Oh,
your
I loved it. It
interpretation
was
on
so much
Yeah,
fun. It
yeah.
was so much fun, and I did Barracuda, in dreamy, heavy mellow style.
What else do you guys have for us?
Oh, let's do a little Charlie Brown's Christmas.
All right.
Here we go. Yeah. Let's go for blues again.
Yes, nice work. Michael Allen Harrison and Elena Stuffler here in studio. Vince, what do you think made Vince Guaraldi so great and what he did?
Oh my God! He was well, academically in the jazz world. I mean, he really knew his chops. He knew the voicings, the alternative chords. I mean, so on an academic level, he was like really, really up there. But what made him unique is like because sometimes some of that straight ahead jazz is not accessible to everybody. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But he was able to mix that kind of academic level of jazz and then bring in a little bit more of a pop sound, where you hear more melody and just his feel and the way he was able to capture, the vibe of Peanuts. I don't think Peanuts and Charlie Brown would have been as big as it was without
There's no way.
his music. I mean, he just captured it just right, and it's really great jazz. It is really great jazz. But then he wrote some stuff that's really um, uh, way accessible. So like a lot of the early popular music that came out of jazz is like Nat King Cole and like even Bing Crosby, Ella Fitzgerald, you know, um, Bobby Short, all those from the 30s and the 40s. Their jazz was the popular music of the time, and it was more melody, driven than the really like there's a lot of straight ahead jazz that's like and it's more atonal and the chords. So in like regular chord building is built in thirds, right? Well, in a lot of avant-garde jazz, it's built in fourths, so that gives it that sound. It was more of that bebop, kind of sound. And but Vince Guaraldi mixed those two things together and made it really accessible and cool all at the same time.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. If you guys have time, I want to keep you for one more segment.
Okay.
All right. So we'll come back. We got more from Elena Stupler, who's in studio, along with Michael Allen Harrison, getting ready for Christmas at the Old Church here on the Rip City Drive. All right, Rip City Drive. Elena Stupler and Michael Allen Harrison in the studio. Go to michaelallenharrison.com. You can get details on showtimes and tickets. Coming up on the 13th will be the first of 18 shows. Christmas at the Old Church. All the details you need to get tickets are right there. And tickets are on sale now. You can call 1-800-820-9884. Go to michaelallenharrison.com. I'm so happy you guys came in studio today. This is so much fun for me. So thank you, my friend.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, I listen to you all the time, because, I'm a sports nut.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about the Blazers and a little bit about my Packers. And I was a little bit sad last Thursday night.
Painful loss.
It was it was a good game.
It was a great game.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you've talked about it today. I haven't been listening today, but I'm sure you talked about the Kansas City, luck just keeps going. I mean,
right off the upright.
yeah, I mean, it's like, right?
It's like, come on, man. What are we doing
It's
here?
like, come on,
Gotta
man,
love
but
it,
we're
though.
not surprised. It's just there's some kind of magic going on with that Mr. Mahomes. I'm telling you.
He's something else.
Yeah.
All right. What else you got for us before you go?
Yeah, well, let's do one more song from Charlie Brown's Christmas.
Oh,
This
yes.
is one of my favorites. It's the sentimental piece, and this was the lyrics and the music was written by Vince Guaraldi, and such a beautiful song. Everybody loves it, and how appropriate to do it right now because Christmas time is here.
It's wonderful. Beautiful work. Excellent. Elena,
Thank you,
so
Jen.
impressive.
Thank you.
So good. So are you performing in all 18 of the shows?
Not all 18, but I'm performing the 13th, 14th, 15th, and 17th.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, and on the 14th, I think we have 2 shows. And so I think you're going to be in about 6 shows altogether this year. So, yeah, excited to have her.
That's
Very
great.
exciting.
Yeah.
That's got to be a thrill for you.
Yes.
That's awesome. All right, Elena, and you're from Lake Ridge High School.
Yes.
That's good. How are things going in school?
Good. I'm really enjoying my jazz band class right now. We went down to the middle school today to promote jazz band for the 8th graders. That was so much fun.
Oh, that's good. What did they receive it pretty well?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Notice that she didn't mention history.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the best part about today is you're missing history class to spend time on the Rip City Drive. I like that. I approve. Oh, Michael, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, what a pleasure,
I know you're
Chad.
busy, man. You're all
Yeah.
over the place right now. Where are you going after here? You're going up
Well, I'm
Highway
headed
30.
to Columbia City. I've been doing that show for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, somewhere around there. There's so many traditions, I get to do every year. Doing the show at the RISA Performing Arts now is a tradition. This was our third year, of course, our 35th season at the old church, for crying out loud. We were, I think it's like our 20th year. We've been out in Canby. We get out to Bend sometimes. We didn't go to Bend this year. We were in Newburgh last week. So we get, all around the state. But let's see, tonight, Columbia City. Tomorrow, I'm in Vancouver. And then Wednesday and Thursday, I have 2 private party gigs. And then starting Friday night, that's my favorite time because I love it at the old church, but I'm not traveling. Once we set up, I don't have any setup to do. We're set up and I'm there for 10 days. And so this is what my day is like. I perform at night. I go home, relax, have a little snack, watch football highlights or Blazer highlights, Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes a little frustrated with my Blazers. and then then I sleep in.
Yeah, rest.
I sleep in and I, have a nice breakfast and then I go to lunch with friends and I catch up with family and then I go do a gig, and then that's my routine all the way through Christmas Eve. It's like, it's the most wonderful time of the year.
It is.
Yeah.
All right, go to michaelallenharrison.com to get details on tickets and for the show times starting on December 13th. Elena Stupler, thank you for coming in studio.
Thank
Lake
you for
Ridge High
having
School's
me.
own. Michael, thank you, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Chad.
All right,
See
we'll
you
keep
soon.
things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Joel Gunderson will join us at 5:20 to focus in on the Ducks. I'll share my thoughts on the playoff committee. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, now 4 o'clock. The Oregon Ducks are the number 1 seed in the playoff. Their first game is going to be in the Rose Bowl New Year's Day, kickoff at 2. They're going to face the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, and those two will meet in Columbus on the 21st. Dan Lanning talking about the Rose Bowl.
It's certainly a thrill for me. Obviously, a big fan of our program, and influence on our program is Phil Knight. And, Phil has always told me his number one goal is, can we get to the Rose Bowl?
Elsewhere, Georgia quarterback Carson Beck has an elbow injury. No timetable has been set for his return. The Bulldogs will play their first game on the 1st of January in the Sugar Bowl. They'll meet the winner of Notre Dame and Indiana. Crappy game on Monday Night Football. Kicks off at 5:15. The Bengals at the Cowboys. Cincy favored by 4.5. Trailblazers fall in Los Angeles last night to the Lakers 107-98. Portland now will get 4 days off. They'll face San Antonio Friday night at Moda. Tip-off at 7. Blazers game day with Chris Burkhardt will start at 5. Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday tomorrow. I'll have 2 pairs of tickets to give away for the Nuggets. Just listen to me for your chance to win. All right, big thanks to Elena Stupler and my man Michael Allen Harrison for coming by to preview the Christmas at the Old Church. He's one of our own. Went to Park Rose High School, incredibly talented. I saw him in concert on a Valentine's Day show back when I was 19 years old. 94 was the first time I saw him live. And then, one thing that's great about this job is the opportunity to meet cool people, and Michael is one of the best. But what's really great about Michael is that he cares about, the Portland area, the community here that we live in. And through his music and with his shows, particularly the Christmas at the Old Church, is how he continues to, pay it forward by, working with youngsters who love music. And so I just appreciate, his soul. He's one of those people where you meet and there's just a gentle nature about him, a certain gentleness to his soul. He loves music, very smart, but he's a great guy, and he loves sports. So I always want to talk to him about music. He always wants to talk to me about the Packers and the Trailblazers. So that's pretty much how it goes. All right, coming up in 20 minutes, Stephanie Maldonado from the Trailblazers is going to join us. They're kicking off their 12 Days of Christmas today, and I think this is a badass promotion. So we'll get the details on the 12 Days of Christmas coming up with Stephanie Maldonado, and then Joel Gunderson's going to talk Ducks and the pathway that they have coming up at 5:20. And I've got a lot of different things I want to get to. Championship weekend, which was amazing. And, of course, the committee, now that we have the 12-team field, it's been set. And what we have to remember is with the 12-team playoff that we have this year, the format, I think there's 2 different ways to look at this. The format with the 4 highest-ranked conference champions getting byes, and then we have to look at what the committee gave us. The system is not perfect. Now, it's clear. Let me just tell you this. I'm not giving you the details to complain because college football's never been better. And I think most of you can look at what the regular season gave us right through championship weekend with playoff expansion, and never before have we had a season with more teams, more fan bases, with more hope and more interest, with more games that matter than anything we've had this year. This has been the best season by far. And that's because the powers to be that have been creating all these systems for years, they're a bunch of buffoons. And so they've been giving us a bunch of garbage for years, and they finally are moving in the right direction. But the format was the format, and it limited some of the things that the committee could do. But you have to remember that. The same people that set up the 12-team playoff that we have this year are the same people that gave us the Bowl Alliance, which was horrible, the BCS, and the 4-team playoff. And now the 12-team playoff. So this is not a new system because it's a combination of all the systems. The 12-team playoff was built to placate certain people with a lot of power, the bowl games, the conferences, et cetera. So it's important to remember that because that's why we're in the situation we're in right now. The powers to be are still trying to hold on to the things of the past, like bowl games. Why are we still having bowl games now with the playoff? And why can't we just have on-campus site games leading up to the championship? And that's because people in college football, the powers to be, don't want to let go of the old. But the problem is the 12-team playoff format does not fit with bowl games. So we're going to work through this crappy system until they finally get it solved. But I think the number one issue with the format, with the 12-team playoff system, is the fact that they created it with this desire to retain the value of conference championships games. And right now, the conference championship games, the reason why they want to hold on to them is because they're incredibly valuable to each conference, because those games bring in a lot of TV dollars. They are the types of games with the type of matchups the networks are looking for and the ones they're willing to pay top dollar for. And that's why they don't want to let go of the conference championship games. And premium games like the championship games are critical to the networks when it comes to those contracts. I mean, think about what we saw this past weekend with the automatic buys given to the top four conference champions, the four highest-rated conference champions. It increased the importance of the conference title games, which in the end increased viewership. The Big 12, the Mountain West, and the ACC were all win and you get into the playoffs. So that's the format that the committee was given. They have to place teams in the system that was created. We know the format isn't right because the 4-seed Penn State that just lost to Oregon in the Big Ten title game has an easier path to the championship than Oregon does. No other sport we watch or care about puts the best teams in that type of situation. The NFL, the NBA, all the other sports we love, it's a meritocracy. If you earn the right to be the number one seed, you've got an easier path to the championship. So how did the committee do with the format that was given to them? I think the best way I can describe it was just inconsistency. The rankings were inconsistent. The biggest inconsistency from the committee was how they treated teams inside the top 10 with losses during the regular season compared to the top 10 teams that lost on Championship Saturday. Just look at how far the teams that lost in the top 10 during the regular season dropped compared to the teams that lost on Saturday. Too much emphasis placed on the conference title games, and the reason that's a problem is because the conference schedule path to a conference title game greatly differs from conference to conference and from team to team. For example, SMU, 6 of the 8 conference games they played were against teams at 500 or below, and the 2 teams that were above 500 weren't Miami or Clemson, the 2 other best teams in their conference. In the SEC, just take a look at Texas. They only played 2 of the 8 teams with a winning record in conference, Texas A&M and Georgia. No Tennessee, no Ole Miss, no LSU, no Missouri, no Alabama, and they still don't have a win over a top 25 team. Alabama, for comparison, played 5 of the 8 teams in the SEC with a winning conference record: Georgia, Tennessee, LSU, South Carolina, and Missouri. If you go to the Big Ten, Penn State only played 1 of the 4 playoff teams in the Big Ten. Ohio State played them all. Heck, Penn State lost to Ohio State in the regular season in their own building, and yet they are ranked higher than the Buckeyes in the final rankings because they played in the conference title game, which, of course, is absurd. The imbalanced scheduling is a problem. The paths to conference title games are widely different, and yet the committee was placing a crazy value on those games, the conference title games. And it's unfortunate, but the committee did not utilize a resume-based discussion when ranking the teams. It was more or less who has the better record, and that was that. I mean, if they did base it off of resume, Texas and Penn State wouldn't be in the top 5. Ohio State beat Penn State, and they have a better resume than both those teams. The best teams weren't ranked properly based on the criteria used by the committee, and I don't like it. And as a result, we have teams with the best resume suffering because of the system that's in place. And I think Oregon is the prime example. They are the number 1 seed. They are undefeated. They played the best football throughout the country the entire season, but their pathway to a national title is the most difficult path of any seed in the freaking bracket. And that's just insane. Oregon will face either Tennessee or Ohio State in their first game in the Rose Bowl. If they advance, they'll likely meet Texas, and if they win that game, they would likely meet Georgia in the national title game. I mean, just think about that for a moment. Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia. That's the pathway for Oregon, the number 1 seed, to win a championship. Penn State, on the other hand, who, like we said, only played 1 of the 4 playoff teams from the Big Ten. They lost that game to Ohio State. They lost the Big Ten championship to Oregon. They're going to face SMU in their first game at home. And then if they win, which they will, they'll advance and face Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl before they'd have to take on Notre Dame or Georgia. So, in other words, Oregon, based on system, got crapped on by the committee. But that's the system they were given. And it's ridiculous. So it's not perfect. It's got to get better. And I would like to see somehow, some way, a resume come into the discussion because schedules are not the same and pathways throughout the conferences to get to the title game are totally different. And I think we can all agree on that. Joel Klatt of Fox Sports, their lead analyst, he talked about Oregon's situation as the number 1 seed.
Congratulations, Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. You got absolutely screwed by the playoff committee because their sentiment of trying to create artificial floors rose some of these teams to the levels where they shouldn't be. That's the problem. The reward for going 13-0 and having the best regular season in all of college football, which is supposed to be the most valuable regular season in all of sports, the reward for that is having to play the 3 highest odds team to win the national championship. They're going to have to go through possibly Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia to win the national championship. So now it's not a true meritocracy. Now it's not a true playoff. It's not a true bracket. You set out to do something like value the conference championship game, and in doing so, you devalued the conference championship game. That's the unintended consequence. The cost of the artificial manipulation of seeds will be bore by Oregon, the exact team that should have earned every right to have the easiest path to a national championship. That's what we do in every other sport because it's a true meritocracy in those sports. And we don't artificially pull the levers of power to bump teams up based on sentiment. We let it be.
All right, there's Joel Klatt. So they're going to have to continue to tinker. Not that I trust the powers to be because they continue to give us, these type of systems, but they're going to have to tinker and do a better job. And the idea of giving the 4 highest rated conference winners automatic buys in the playoff, I think that's a bit crazy. Look, I love what Arizona State has done. I'm excited about the Sun Devils and the fact they're in the playoff, but they, along with Boise, should not have first-round buys. They just shouldn't. If you want to give, the automatic bids into the playoff for the conference winners, that's one thing, but not freaking buys. You've got to do a better job of seeding at the very least. And I don't understand why they can't change it now. You can make changes whenever you want. They need to change it to where at least after the first round, you reseed it to make sure that the number 1 seed or your top seeds have a better path. Oregon having to go through Ohio State or Tennessee and then Texas and Georgia to win a national championship is insanity. Good luck with that. The 3 other teams outside of Oregon that have the best odds in Vegas to win a national championship, you want to take a guess on those 3 teams? I think you might be able to guess it based on everything I've just laid out. That's right. If you guessed Texas, Ohio State, and Georgia, those are the 3 teams along with Oregon that have the best odds to win the championship. And don't worry, Oregon, you're the number 1 seed, but you got to play all those teams. No offense, of course. All right, we'll keep things rolling. We're going to come back and get details on the Trailblazers' 12 days of Christmas. And then I've got a lot more thoughts on what we saw. How about my man Cam Scattaboo? The human wrecking machine, the bowling ball just destroying all competition. Unfortunately, even though it's deserved, he will not win the Heisman Trophy. That will go to somebody else. But Cam Scattaboo is officially my favorite football player next to Bo Nix in the world right now. Love watching him play. All right, you got the Rip City Drive. 12 days of Christmas for the Trailblazers coming up next. All right, the Portland Trailblazers are kicking off their 12 Days of Christmas, and this is one of those promotions that I think is awesome. So joining us right now to talk about it is their marketing manager, Stephanie Maldonado, who's back on the Rip City Drive. Stephanie, thank you for coming on. I'm excited about this 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.
We're stoked about it, too.
Yeah, you should be. This is a great promotion. So why don't we go ahead and start with the concept behind it, and then we'll get into the details, how people can get involved to try to win great prizes from the Trailblazers. But walk us through the thought process in putting together the 12 Days of Christmas with the Trailblazers.
Yeah, we just wanted to kind of spread some Rip City cheer and, develop kind of our version of an advent calendar. And so for the next 12 days through the 20th, we have great giveaways. I won't give away all of them, but each day is a new prize. And it's not only like Blazers-related things, but we got some of our friends involved. So we have a prize from Alaska Airlines. My friends at Travel Portland also got involved, too. And so, yeah, it was just a way to kind of bring some Blazer pride and some Rip City cheer to Portland and beyond.
All right, so I'm on the website right now. I went to trailblazers.com/12 days, and it's pretty sweet because it pops up on the screen. 12 days of Rip City, 12 days, 12 prizes, 12 chances to win. Each day brings a new prize, so be sure to enter daily for your chance to win Blazer swag, premium tickets, and even a round-trip flight. So based on what I'm reading there, Stephanie, the cool thing is that as a Blazer fan, I can enter each and every day throughout the 12 days of Christmas, correct?
Definitely.
That is
each
terrific.
day you can enter for each prize, and you only get to win one if you're one of the lucky winners. But, I mean, I would enter into each one because there's no bad prize for this.
All right, well, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to walk through and do it each and every day and see what the potential prizes are. For today, it says enter for your chance to win a Blazers swag bag packed with signed items and a limited edition gear, including the Donovan Clingan glass. Now, you and I have talked about this before. How big of a hit was the Donovan Clingan glass on the first night to the first 7,777 fans? I was able to get a glass, and so I'm very happy I have it. They're beautiful, but what was the fan reaction to them?
I mean, it was incredible. It helped that Donovan had a heck of a game that night, and so he was really, like, the star of the show the whole night. And, yeah, fans were loving it. We were loving it. And we have our Scoot glass giveaway coming this Friday as the team faces the Spurs.
You know what was amazing about that is not only the night that he had with the 17 rebounds, the defense, the block shots, he was incredible. But the best part was, and I'm sure you heard this, his family was in the audience, including his Nana. And after the game, he was talking about how he needs to get a hold of a glass to make sure he can get it to Grandma. I thought that was amazing.
Oh, yeah. We're hooking it up. We saw, we heard that Grandma was in the stands. So, yeah, we're sending him a whole case so that the whole family can have a glass.
All right. I think I have the date right, but upcoming on Friday is going to be the Blazers and Spurs, 7 o'clock tip at Moda Center. Is that the next glass night with Scoot Henderson?
That is. So, yeah, the first 7,777 fans in the building will get a voucher so that at the end of the game they can redeem for a Scoot Henderson glass.
Okay, that's terrific. And if you go to trailblazers.com to get your tickets, do you guys still have the ticket packs available where you can get the games included with the glasses that are still available with Scoot and Shea?
The glassware pack is actually sold out, so we only have the single game, the single ticket version. So, yeah, we've got Scoot on Friday, and then January 26th against the Clippers, we have the Shade and Sharp glass.
Okay, great. Well, even though the ticket packs are sold out, that's great news, by the way. But if they get single game tickets, it doesn't matter if you have a ticket pack or a single game ticket. If you're one of the first 7,777 fans that arrive at Moda Center, you'll still get your glass.
Yeah, so get there early so you can get your glass.
Yes, no doubt. That's awesome. And then we had talked about this before. If you would hand out the glasses beforehand, and of course, what we learned with sporting events, it's probably best to give the gifts away afterwards. But it worked out perfect because everyone got their voucher. And then I know people, when they were exiting the arena, they were able to pick up their glass on the way out. So you guys had it set up really well. It worked out. It seemed like it went smooth.
Yeah, it went as best as we could. I mean, we had, luckily it didn't rain, but yeah, it seemed to be a smooth process, and we're going to run it back on Friday. But yeah, so make sure if you're in the building, you hang on to that voucher.
That is terrific. We're talking with Stephanie Maldonado from the Portland Trail Blazers. So we've got the 12 Days of Christmas. We got the the glass nights coming up on Friday with Scoot Henderson. Is there anything else on the horizon, Stephanie, that you can tell us about that you guys are planning that's pretty cool?
Yeah, we have a lot of things launching for the holiday, and one is our winter warm-up pack. So it's a 3-game pack. It's kind of a cheeky spin on a holiday pack, but we have 3 matchups. So it's the Heat, the Suns, and, of course, everyone's favorite, the Bucks. And you also get a Rip City fleece blanket. So those sizzling matchups plus the blanket keeps you warm all winter long. So those are available at trailblazers.com/ticket packs.
That's great. I like the variety packs where you get a little bit of everything like that.
Yeah, it's fun. And, it's always cold in the Northwest, so we need a little something to keep us cozy all season long.
Okay, that's great. So what do you do? I'm curious because I was talking to some of the, we've heard from the players and the coach, and I know I run into some of the broadcasters. Like, it's rare where you get 4 days off between games at this time of the season in December. The Blazers played last night, and they get Monday through Thursday off. The next game won't come up until Friday. So what does that do for you work-wise when you have 4 days off without an event?
I mean, the grind really never stops. And so we're working hard to make sure that we keep selling tickets, even though, the players aren't at home. But once they come back, we want to make sure that arena is packed. And so we're still grinding in the front office, and we're still even planning for January and beyond. And so we're always trying to think, 6 weeks ahead.
That is great. All right, 12 days of Christmas. Go to trailblazers.com/12 days, and you can enter to win. Today is the first day, and it's up for prizes. You can have your chance to win a sweet prize pack, which includes the Donovan Clingan glass. Stephanie did mention that there could be an opportunity to win some airfare on Alaska. Any other details? Like, is there any potentially maybe a signed jersey from a player or a basketball? Like, what else? Can you give us a hint of what else might be lined up throughout the course of the 12 days of Christmas?
Yeah, like I said, I won't give them away, but we do have some signed autographed items. We also have some things from our City Edition line, and I don't know, maybe even some courtside tickets.
I like that. No, it's good. I saw the City Edition jerseys this year a couple of weeks ago when they were first put on the racks to go up for sale. I think they're beautiful, and especially when you're looking at them up close, you can see the fusion with the plaid in the jersey. What's been the reaction to the City Edition so far?
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of positive feedback. I think the players love them. They look really great on the court, and I personally love kind of the fusion of the Pacific Northwest with the classic plaid of the Portland Trail Blazers. And so, yeah, I think they're gorgeous. I think our team did a great job, and we love seeing them.
Yeah, it's great. All right, Stephanie Maldonado, marketing manager for the Portland Trail Blazers. The 12 days of Christmas. Today is day number 1. Go to trailblazers.com/12 days to enter for your chance to win. And you can follow along each and every day and enter for your chance to win. If you win a prize, then you are unable to win another prize, but that's okay. Keep going until you get your chance to win. That's going to be awesome. Anything else you need to add in, Stephanie?
No, I mean, I think just enter to win for those 12 days of Rip City, and go Blazers. All
right, Stephanie, I appreciate you stopping by the show. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and thank you for giving us the details on the 12 days of Christmas.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks, Chad.
All right, there you go. Stephanie Maldonado, Portland Trailblazers here on the Rip City Drive. All right, I'm going to enter to win right now. Why not? Let's see if I can
I should do that too, Chad.
I'm going to do it right now. So just go to trailblazers.com/12 days, and then you click on number 1 because it's the first day, and then it just asks for your name, first and last, email, and it says here, I agree with the official rules. Yes. Who reads the rules on a website anyways? Nobody? Enter now. And boom, I have entered. We'll email you if you're the lucky winner. In the meantime, come back tomorrow for your chance to win a new prize. My goal is, as a member of a company that's partners with the Trailblazers and as someone that does work for the Trailblazers, I want to see if I can win and see if they reject me. That's my goal. I want to be drawn. But those glasses are nice. So what'd you say? So Friday for the Spurs game, so Wemby's going to be in town. It's the Scoot Henderson glass night. And these glasses, from what I can tell from the Donovan Clingan glass, the Dairy Queen glasses are awesome, and they were great, but I think these glasses are more well-made. That's my take on the Donovan Clingan glass. All right. There you go. Trailblazers.com/12 days. All right, I want to ask Brenden. I laid out the situation with the committee. We heard from Joel Klatt, his take on the Ducks. I mean, think about that, Brenden. Oregon's first game will go against Tennessee or Ohio State. And then if the top seeds prevail, they would then face Texas, and then to win a national championship, presumably Georgia in the title game. They're the number 1 seed, and they're the only unbeaten team in the FBS, and they won their conference title game. Unbeaten, number 1 seed, and look at that pathway. They face potentially the 3 teams after Oregon that have the best odds in Vegas to win the title. That's brutal.
Yeah, I think they definitely drew the short end here, which is kind of ironic considering that Oregon was the best team in college football this year. But no, I mean, looking at that bracket, Chad, I mean, selfishly, you mentioned Texas. Can we get a Oregon-Arizona State matchup? Can we get that somewhere along the way? I'd love to see Dan Lanning and Kenny Dillingham go back at it. But no, to your point, there's going to be the playoff is going to expand even more, we think, in years to come. And I think protecting maybe like the NFL, right, where the Chiefs and Lions right now, they're fighting to get that first round bye, right? It's only 1 team per conference, but maybe there's some way to help like reward that Oregon is 13-0. You know what I mean, Chad? Because it feels like, hey, they're on pretty even ground. What's the point of going 13-0?
Exactly. Or you could be Penn State. They're going to play SMU, and then they would move on to face Boise. So their pathway to the semifinals would be much easier than Oregon's pathway with the teams that they have to play. Now, you're also a Heisman voter, Brenden.
First time.
And the interesting part is they invite 4 finalists to the Downtown Athletic Club in New York, but they only give you 3 options. So you don't rate 1 through 4. You give your top 3. So they only gave you 3 options on the ballot.
Yes, 3 options. They announced, obviously, that it was Ginty and Dylan Gabriel and Travis Hunter. And then the surprise was Cam Ward from Miami. So got to get the Eastern time.
No, you're getting ahead of me here. But on your ballot, there were only 3 players listed on the ballot.
Yes, you could type in any 3 players you wanted. But, yes, you had to pick 3.
Okay, so the ballot is you came up with the players that you thought, and then based on the votes that come in from the Heisman voters, that's how they determine who are the 4 guys that will be invited to the Downtown Athletic Club.
Exactly. Yep. So it's like it was first choice got 2 votes, 3 votes, second choice got 2 votes, third choice. And I don't think I could make it public yet, but I'll just say.
But let me ask you this: the 3 players that you voted for. Are all 3 of those players going to be at the Downtown Athletic Club?
Yes. I nailed it. I didn't see a guy from Miami coming up, but hey, that's the fun in it, and I'm curious to see ultimately.
So Cam Ward was not on your ballot?
No, he was not.
But he probably was on other people's ballots on the other side of the Mississippi River.
Yeah, and I know it sounds cliche and kind of joking, but Chad, like I came to you and I said, how would the Downtown Athletic Club feel if all 3 finalists, or 4, I know you had an advocation for Cam Scattaboo and totally see why, but like if you're Downtown Athletic Club, how you feeling if all 4 of those are west of the Rockies?
Yeah, they got to.
That's crazy. So I imagine that's why Cam Ward was a good season, great kid, great story, but Miami not in the playoff.
Yeah, it's criminal.
But running the football with Scattaboo really has been paying dividends early.
Here is Scattaboo, and this is exactly what he does. How did he stay on balance there? Look at him go! Scattaboo inside the 30.
Cam Scattaboo this year, 1,538 yards rushing, 473 yards receiving, and 21 total touchdowns. So over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 21 touchdowns, and did not get an invite to New York. It's very unfortunate. He is my favorite player to watch in college football. He was absolutely dominant in the Big 12 championship game against Iowa State. Look, I'm not a football coach, but I can tell you this much. If you want to stop a guy like Cam Scattaboo, the 3-3 defense is not the best way to do that. It ain't it. In the 2 times he's faced the 3-3 defense this year, he's absolutely just destroyed it. He's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Now, the other player that I was dead on about, before the season began, in fact, when we got word that they had acquired Dylan Gabriel, if you remember, I was quick to point out how fortunate the Ducks were to get a player of his caliber. I'm a huge Dylan Gabriel fan because he played for the Oklahoma Sooners. So I watched him closely for 2 years. I admired his leadership, his playmaking ability, his ability to improvise, to throw on the run, his accuracy, his leadership, and the fact that he had played in multiple big games. The guy's got big-time stones in big-time moments. And we saw it again in this title game against Penn State. He was flawless in his execution against the Nittany Lions. On a day where the Lions brought the offense and Oregon had to keep the pressure on, keep the throttle in the offense, Dylan Gabriel was Johnny on the spot. And Dan Lanning talking about his quarterback after the game.
This guy deserves every single thing that comes his way. I told him that earlier this week when he got player of the year in the Big Ten. I mean, if anybody can't watch that performance and recognize how special he is, and maybe the most special play to me was the 3rd and 1 when he won it in his hands to get that tough yard. This team believes in him. They're grateful every day that they get to step on the field with him. He's about connection and people first. But the poise that he shows in big games is unmeasured. I mean, I haven't been around players like Dylan. I'm really grateful that I get to share the field with him.
Yeah, Gabriel was great. You remember, I know that none of you will admit to this now, but there were a lot of Duck fans who were freaking out after the first 2 games of the year against Idaho and then Boise State. You know, it took a while for them to get things going because they had a new quarterback and they were transitioning in some new players. They had some injuries on the offensive front, so they got off to a slow start. And I'm not joking. There were a ton of people, and I took criticism from Duck fans who were pissed because I'm like, what are you worried about? Just relax and let this process take place. They're going to be fine. And sure enough, they were. They got better week by week. But what was cool about Dylan Gabriel is that he was unflappable through that entire process. He didn't change the way he went about his business. He wasn't, worried or freaked out or panicked when the Ducks offense got off to a slow start. He didn't point the finger and blame everyone else when the offensive line was dealing with injuries and they were struggling to get the running game going and the pass blocking. But week by week, they got better. But his, the way he operates, the way he works in practice, the way he prepares for games, the way he studies the film, this is what happens when you have guys like Bo Nix and then Dylan Gabriel who have over 60 starts in college football. They've been there and done that. There's nothing that bothers them. They've got the experience. They're older, a little more mature. And then when you got the ability to make plays the way they do, teammates will gravitate to those type of guys. I mean, how fortunate were the Ducks to go from Bo Nix to Dylan Gabriel? The 2 most experienced quarterbacks in the history of college football. But not only that, but they're both darn good. But, man, Gabriel balling his backside off. I'm very happy for him that he gets a chance to represent Oregon at the Downtown Athletic Club. He's not going to win the Heisman. My guess is Travis Hunter's going to win. He and Genty will be the top 2, but Dylan Gabriel is deserving to be there for sure. Now, I would have taken Cam Scatterbo over Cam Ward in a heartbeat. No one in college football is more important to their team than Cam Scatterbo. And when you have 2,000-plus yards from scrimmage and you play the way he does and you're dedicated the way he is, just like Dylan Gabriel, the work, the emphasis on focus, dedication to the team, the whole shebang, it's there.
Yeah, I think kind of something with that too, Chad, is like when you go, the fact that they, and I say they in the sense of like the Heisman committee or whatever it was, throwing Cam Ward in there, it's like, it's almost for a guy and a team that did not make the playoff, the fact that no one from the SEC, ACC were like good enough to just be like, oh, we got to invite that guy? It should have been Scatterbo.
I know.
I'm with you. Like, it should have been a West Coast award this year, man. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, his story is terrific. Absolutely terrific. All right, we'll come back, and I want to talk about the pathway. I've got some insight. The one thing I can say for sure, even though Oregon's pathway is freaking brutal, and it is brutal, there's no question about it, the good thing is that you look at some of these other teams, they can beat anybody, and I'll explain why when we come back. Rip City Drive, we'll talk with Joel Gunderson at 5:20. We'll talk to him about the Ducks and get his take on the Big Ten Championship game, the pathway. Joel Gunderson at 5:20. I'll discuss the path and some of these other teams that they could face along the way coming up next. This is such a great song. I mean, legitimately a great song. I got stuck in a Tears for Fears YouTube mode last week.
That must have been fun.
It was a lot of fun. I think Head Over Heels is my favorite song that they have, but this one here is, I would describe this song as like the quintessential 80s song. Like when you hear it, it takes you back to that time and place. All right. You can reach out to me on social at Chad and Rip City. Telephone number 503-248-0620. A reminder, we talked with Stephanie Maldonado from the Trailblazers. The game coming up on Friday with Wemby, who's going to be in town. That was one of the bonus games added in with the NBA Cup schedule, so we get a bonus look at Wembanyama, which is going to be dope. 7 o'clock tip. Tickets are available. Go to trailblazers.com, and if you're one of the first 7,777 fans that show up at Moda Center on Friday, you get a Scoot Henderson glass, and that is dope. I have the Donovan Clingan glass. So now all I need is Blazer fan Ray or some other wonderful individual to bring by the Scoot glass so I can keep the collection going. Blazer fan Ray was kind enough to step up and deliver glasses to Radio Row there. So Travis, Curtis, and myself got a glass, which is nice. But
Lucky you guys.
I know.
That's good friends, Chad. Friends in high places, man.
You got to have people to take care of you. But that's the game on Friday, the Scoot glass. First 7,777 fans will get one. So get your tickets now at trailblazers.com. All right, this pathway. Oregon did get jacked. They got screwed by the committee, or should I say by the format. I mean, that's the problem. Oregon was number one, and for good reason. They're the only unbeaten team in the FBS. They beat Ohio State. They won their championship game. I got to give credit to Penn State, too. I think they're fraudulent. Aller, their quarterback, has got some great physical tools. Like, he's got talent, but he's young, and you can see the inexperience. But they have two good runners. They have the best tight end in college football, and their front seven on defense is super legit. But their offense for most of the year has been almost unwatchable, really. They have issues moving the football and scoring points, but, man, they look good on, Saturday. So I give them limited props for the performance they put together in the game, although it never felt like Oregon was in danger of losing it. The Ducks moved the football at will on a good defense whenever they needed to. Dylan Gabriel just making plays, and Tez Johnson, playing his balls off. It was awesome. Dylan Gabriel put on a show. But this pathway, so my guess is, it's weird because, football, it really is a game of matchups. Ohio State playing at home is a major advantage. Tennessee's going to have to go up there. They're going to be freezing their booty off, having to play in the conditions at Columbus. But Tennessee's strength plays right into the weakness of Ohio State. Ohio State's offensive line is banged up. They're missing some key guys. They haven't been strong in pass protection. And the strength of Tennessee is their defensive line. They're just ferocious. So that's going to be a brutal game for Ohio State. And Ryan Day right now is not the most popular guy in Columbus. So if they get off to a slow start and Will Howard's doing Will Howard type things, then the fans are going to turn quickly. They're not going to be down. It's weird that you can have a home playoff game in the playoff and it's a letdown, but that's the case for Ohio State. Now, the weird thing about Ohio State, even with the offensive line injuries, like if I'm picking a team from top down, just overall talent, they're probably the most talented team in college football, Ohio State. So my guess is they're going to win that game against Tennessee. So Oregon is going to have to play a team that they already beat by a point earlier in the year, arguably the most talented team roster-wise in college football in their first game. Now, here's the advantage for Oregon. Oregon is healthy. Oregon will have plenty of rest and preparation time for that game. And they had great success moving the football on them in Eugene earlier in the season. But here's the ultimate edge for Oregon in that game. They have Dylan Gabriel, and the Ohio State Buckeyes have Will Howard. If you look through all 12 playoff teams, you'll come to the same conclusion I did, that the best quarterback remaining in the playoffs right now is Dylan Gabriel. And that is, in football, as you know, when you have the best quarterback, that gives you a great edge. But it's not just Gabriel, but you have the best quarterback with offensive line play, with good defensive line play, with more physicality. I mean, it's a good spot to be if you're Oregon. I think the two best quarterbacks remaining in the playoff are Dylan Gabriel and Sam Levitt. Will Howard is not that guy. So a lot of pressure on Ryan Day, but they've got issues on their offensive line. The Ducks' defensive front will be able to get pressure. The Ducks' defensive front will be able to get to Will Howard. And if that happens, what do you think Will Howard's going to do? Play a clean game? No, I don't think so. Now, Texas, who I've watched now twice this year against Georgia go down, and I've watched them throughout the year. Keep in mind with Texas, they're ranked high, but it's not based on resume. Let's just put it that way. They have no wins against anyone in the top 25. They did not play a tough SEC schedule. And here's the truth about Texas. Like, maybe Arch Manning's not ready to be the guy yet, but Quinn Ewers is not special. He's just not. He is not special. He's not explosive. He's not a big playmaker. He's not someone that instills fear in defenses or defensive coordinators. And for Texas, like, where's the big difference makers? Where were the big difference makers in that game against Georgia? And when Georgia was struggling in that first half, where was Quinn Ewers? And what was that offense doing when they only put up 6 points? And then what was Steve Sarkisian doing with his play calling in overtime? We're going to run a couple of fades, incompletes, and then we'll throw a stupid pass into the flat and then get beat. Come on, Steve. I thought you were like some type of offensive genius or guru or something. But the problem is, like, Manning's not quite ready, but Quinn Ewers is not the guy. I guess what I'm trying to say is that Texas is not winning a championship with Quinn Ewers. So what you have to worry about with Texas, offensive line might be the best talent-wise in the country, and their defense is really good. But that's a game that Oregon can win. Now with Georgia, you know, I've said this all along. I thought Georgia probably the most difficult matchup for Oregon, probably for most teams because of their defensive front, which is nasty. It's flat out nasty. And they've got great team speed. But the issue with Georgia right now is it doesn't sound like Carson Beck's going to be able to go. So can they rely on the young quarterback Gunner to be able to get the job done? That's really what it comes down to. So the pathway, yes, it's hard. It's brutal. And it's unfortunate for the 1 seed to face it. But Ohio State's got Will Howard, and they've got offensive line issues. Texas has Quinn Ewers. And that's a problem because he's not getting it done in big games. He's not dynamic. He doesn't scare you. They're not winning a championship with him. And Georgia doesn't have their starting quarterback, who's going to be probably a first-round selection or taken in the first 2 rounds. So it's difficult, but not impossible. That's all I'm saying. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Don't forget Scoot Henderson's glass. If you want to collect the whole set, it's going to be on Friday. Spurs game. Get tickets at trailblazers.com. First 7,777 fans that show up will get a Scoot Henderson glass. Joel Gunnarsson talking Ducks at 5:20. All right, 5 o'clock. What's up, my friends? We've got Monday Night Football on ESPN in 15 minutes. Cowboys and Bengals from Big D. Dallas is a 4.5-point underdog. And Cincinnati still battling for the final playoff spot in the AFC. The Trailblazers will have 4 days off after last night's loss in L.A. to the Lakers. Next up, they'll take on the San Antonio Spurs. Friday at Motor Center, tip-off at 5. Chris Burkhardt will kick off our coverage with Game Day at 5 o'clock. Georgia quarterback Carson Beck has an elbow injury. No timetable has been set for his return. The Bulldogs will play their first game on January 1st in the Sugar Bowl, and they'll meet the winner of the first-round matchup between Notre Dame and Indiana, which will be played in South Bend. Oregon is the number 1 seed. They'll be in the Rose Bowl on January 1st. For a 2 o'clock kickoff, they'll face the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State, which meet in Columbus on December 21st. All right, 20 minutes from now, Joel Gunderson, our good friend, will join us. He's an expert on the Ducks, and I want to get his thoughts on the pathway and where he's at with the team coming off that offensive explosion against Penn State in the Big Ten title game. And it was pretty sweet, very sweet. Dan Lanning had a chance to speak today, and he talked about the opportunity to be in the Rose Bowl, which is a big deal. That'll be their first game. It's on the 1st of January, and they're going to take on the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, which will meet in Columbus on the 21st, and then the Ducks in the Rose Bowl. I mean, just for a moment, just think about this, like Ohio State and Oregon in the Rose Bowl in a playoff, like with like 100,000 people there. That's like the equivalent of that's like sports porn or like crack. It's unbelievable. But Lanning, pretty excited about the opportunity to be in the Rose Bowl.
Being on this side of the country, this is a game you dream of the opportunity to coach in. And this is one of these games. This is one of the ones that I haven't got to do yet. So it's certainly a thrill for me. Obviously, a big fan of our program and influence on our program is Phil Knight. And, Phil has always told me his number 1 goal is can we get to the Rose Bowl? So I'm extremely ecstatic that our team gets to be a part of such a historic game. The granddaddy of them all. So this will be a fun one for us, and I know our players are looking forward to preparing for that moment to get out on that field.
A big fan and influencer, Phil Knight, that's putting it mildly, Coach. That is putting it mildly. So Oregon's in the Rose Bowl, which is pretty sweet. They were able to get the win over Penn State after Dylan Gabriel went wild with 4 touchdowns. Just immense in that game. You need a tough yard to pick up. He can get it. You need a big-time pass, down the seam. He's got that. You need him to buy time and scramble and find Tez Johnson open down the middle of the field. He's got that. Whatever you need, he's got. He's big time. And he's going to be one of the 4 finalists at the Downtown Athletic Club for the Heisman Award.
This guy deserves every single thing that comes his way. I told him that earlier this week when he got player of the year in the Big Ten. I mean, if anybody can't watch that performance and recognize how special he is, and maybe the most special play to me was the 3rd and 1 when he won it in his hands to get that tough yard. This team believes in him. They're grateful every day that they get to step on the field with him. He's about connection and people first. But the poise that he shows in big games is unmeasured. I mean, I haven't been around players like Dylan. I'm really grateful that I get to share the field with him.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel's awesome. It's terrific. Experienced, leadership, playmaking ability. He's the best quarterback in the playoff. And when you've got that, along with the rest of the roster and the talent they have, that puts you in a position to win a championship regardless of path. I'd rather have that path with the squad they've got in Dylan Gabriel than I would Penn State. Penn State's got an easy path, but they're not winning a championship. It's not happening. Who are the teams that can actually win it? Let's think about that for a moment, and we'll come back to that. So the Ducks have the best quarterback. Dylan Gabriel will be one of the Heisman finalists. He's had a big-time year. He's been awesome. Elsewhere, how about that kick that we saw from Nolan Hauser in that game in the ACC title game with Clemson and SMU? SMU battled back. They were down big early. They came all the way back to tie up the game, and there's like 19 seconds on the clock. Clemson gets a big kickoff return and one pass completion from Klubnik, and they're in a position to kick a 56-yarder, which Hauser had not done before. Sean McDonough on the call.
He has not been in this situation before. One of the great high school kickers in the history of the United States. It'll be a 56-yarder. The win really not a factor. Snap and hold are good. That one is good! At the buzzer! Clemson wins the ACC!
Sean McDonough is awesome. That was a great call. The kick was absolutely cold-blooded, right down the middle. Hauser just nutted up and just crushed it. Incredible. And the reason why SMU was about to have a heart attack is because they thought they were done at that point, and everyone assumed that Alabama would get in. But the committee decided to keep SMU in, and Alabama's left out. Last team out's Bama. Last team in is SMU. But what a kick from Hauser. And how about Clemson just ripping a playoff spot from more deserving teams because they lucked their way into the ACC title game based off tiebreak, partly because Miami choked it up, and they get in there and win the game. It's wild. At Clemson, not a dominant team at all. They've got a great defensive line. Defensive front's really nice, but they've had issues scoring in the red zone all year. But that was a heck of a ball game. In the Big 12 championship, it was just more of the same. Cam Skattebo, who is the baddest dude in college football, my favorite player to watch in college football, and a human wrecking machine.
But running the football with Skattebo really has been paying dividends early.
Here is Skattebo, and this is exactly what he does. How did he stay on balance there? Look at him go! Skattebo inside the 30.
Here's the amazing part about Skattebo. Arizona State went into that game without their top wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, who had over 1,000 yards on the season, by far their number one target. So the thought going in was that Skattebo was going to have 35 to 40 touches for Arizona State to win. He touched the ball 18 times and had over 200 yards of total offense and 3 touchdowns. 16 carries, 170 yards, averaged 10 yards a carry, and had another 2 receptions for 38 yards and a touchdown. He is unbelievable, and his contact balance is the best I've ever seen. And I saw some report, his mom was talking about this. He was born, I think, bull-legged, and she was real concerned, so she took him to the doctor, and he started walking. He was like 7 months old, but he was created in a way that he has phenomenal balance, and it helps that he's just as strong as a tank, a human wrecking machine. Love him. Arizona State hasn't won a conference title in 30 years, and now they've done it. Their first year in the Big 12, and they're in a playoff. Second-year man, Kenny Dillingham, youngest coach in college football, who came over from Oregon, who was running the offense for Dan Lanning. And he's an ASU alum, and he's from the Valley, and he's geeked up out of his mind, as he should be. Now, the other interesting part that jumped out at me as I was watching this game, I had assumed in the final year that Justin Herbert had at Oregon, you remember how Justin Herbert went from being terrific as a junior to looking like a mere mortal? And I was like, what in the world's going on here? Is it Marcus Arroyo, the offensive coordinator? Is it the dumb head coach? Which is it? I had assumed that maybe Marcus Arroyo had no idea what he was doing with the offense, and he was single-handedly trying to destroy Justin Herbert. I'm like, what are they doing here? Is it Cristobal? Is it Arroyo? Is Arroyo that dumb? How can you make Justin Herbert look bad at quarterback when he's like one of the most incredible quarterbacks on the planet? But he did. They made him look very feeble. They didn't let him run. They didn't let him move around. He couldn't get the balls downfield. It was frustrating to watch because you knew that Justin Herbert had all the talent in the world, and yet the powers to be had no idea how to use it. I thought it was Arroyo. And then I see him this year with Arizona State, and their offense has been unbelievable. Sam Levitt, the freshman from West Lynn, having a monster year. High completion percentage, 24 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. The Arizona State offense, he's put Skattebo in a position to get over 2,000 yards from scrimmage this year. And then early in that game, Arizona State was trailing 7-3, 4th down and 1, deep in their own territory. Arroyo calls the plays, and this is what he drew up.
With defensive pursuit from just short of their own 35 25-yard line. Levitt to pass on 4th and 1. Wide open and complete. Stovall, a race to the goal line and just tripped up.
What a play. They had worked on it all week at practice. 4th and 1, they go deep, and they connect on it, and the rest is history. They just rolled after that with their offense. Well, Arroyo was talking about, take a listen to this exchange on that 4th down and 1 call early in the game. Love this.
I want to get your side of this because Kenny Dillingham after the game said that was you who drew up the 63-yard pass to Melquan Stovall. How do you come to that decision at that point in the game on that stage?
We had planned all week, and I had a couple things in the bag there, and that was a short yard. You usually have one short yardage shot or something that we work on all week. And, I think there was a time and a place that I felt like we may be able to use it. I mean, Scat, that everyone in the country knows, and on short yardage, who you're probably going to give it to. And I said, you got your shot, shoot your shot, man. You're in the big game. Trust your guys. We worked it all week. Quan did a really good job on what we were trying to get done and execute, and it worked out, man. I know it was crickets on the headphones when I called it. He said, go for it. And I think they were all thinking I was going to a certain call, and I said, nah, I'm going to take a shot. And they went pretty, I don't know if the communication cut out or not, but there was no one else saying anything back to me. So I said, hang on, we're going to be all right. And the guys executed the play perfectly, and I think it set a good tone for the game.
That's awesome. We're going to do what? Crickets. He decides to go deep on 4th and 1, and it's crickets because all their coaches are like, oh, crap, I can't believe Arroyo's going to call this right now. So, in other words, if you're looking back now in retrospect, I would like to apologize for any comments I made in the past towards Marcus Arroyo, when in fact it was Mario Cristobal who single-handedly tried to destroy Justin Herbert when their offense was feeble with a delicious quarterback. What's up, Brenden?
No, I just as you're going through talking about that, and just the way, to your point about Mario Cristobal, Justin Herbert. 2 years ago, Chad, Marcus Arroyo was the guy who won 7 games in 3 years at Nevada. Or UNLV, excuse me. Barry Odom's come in and just lit it on fire there, and Marcus Arroyo has settled into being a coordinator of maybe one of the best teams in football. This is why I love college football. You remember this a couple years back, Chad? Oregon fans were like, oh, yeah, look at Marcus Arroyo. He didn't make it at UNLV. And now it's like, hey, he found his rhythm, man. And some guys are just meant to be coordinators, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, it's tough. He had some success early at UNLV, but that's a tough place to win.
It is.
But it's the same with Barry Odom. Remember, he was run out of town in Missouri.
He was.
And he showed up at UNLV and turned that program around, and now he's got another shot. He just took the job at Purdue. Sometimes it's just a matter of the right fit, the right situation. Clearly, Arroyo and Dillingham have a great connection. Also, it's probably got to be somewhat intoxicating for an assistant to have the freedom to call the game the way you want to call it.
Yeah.
Where the coach is like, hey, it's your deal, man. The coach will give input, but it's your deal. And so I think that's cool that he called that play, crickets on the headphones, because Dillingham was probably nervous about the call, but he trusted his guys to do the work that they had put in. I just think that's cool, man. But, yeah, so Cristobal was the reason that Herbert
we'll just throw that all on Mario.
It is. It's Mario.
Good
job, Mario.
And to your point, I actually missed that earlier today, Chad. So Barry Odom, you look at it now, how does UNLV not fall back to the mediocrity that they were for pretty much all time, except for Barry Odom? So good to see for Barry, but, man, it was fun to watch them running Rebels play the last couple of years.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, they had last 2 years, they were terrific, and Barry Odom turned that program around, and now they will look for the next head coach. But he definitely left the program in a better spot.
Big time.
But I think what this is
showing, it wasn't a high bar, but, yeah, big time.
But it's tough, and I think what we're seeing now in college football is when you don't have the resources to be able to compete in the NIL world, it's tough. It's brutal. And I'm sure Kenny Dillingham's facing that same thing at Arizona State. They're having great success, but even Arizona State doesn't have the resources that some of the other bigger schools from the bigger conferences do, and that's when those teams go around looking to poach. Oh. We didn't notice that player when it came to scouting them initially, but that's a pretty good player right there. Let's go grab him. All right, we'll come back. Joel Gunderson, we'll talk about this Ducks path, the work of Dylan Gabriel and his play, and we'll get his thoughts on the playoff and the way it shapes up right now. Joel Gunderson's coming up next. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. All right, the Oregon Ducks are Big Ten champs. Their first game will be in the Rose Bowl January 1st, and they'll face the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee. Those two play in Columbus on December 21st. And joining us right now to talk some college football is my man Joel Gunderson. Joel, what's up, buddy?
Not much, my man. How are you doing?
Oh, so well. I had so much fun watching all the games this weekend with Conference Championship weekend. I thought it was terrific, and I'm just excited to get this playoff going. But first off, I want to talk about that performance in the Big Ten title game. You know, it was great because Oregon has shown this year they can win games in a variety of different ways. This is a game where they had to put the throttle on the offense, and Dylan Gabriel, I thought, played a masterpiece. What did you see out there on Saturday?
Yeah, it was. I think it was certainly one of those games that all the way around, I don't think anybody really saw coming. You had two very, top 5 defenses really in the country going against each other, and obviously Oregon's offense has a much bigger and better reputation than Penn State's. But when you really looked at the stat-wise coming in, Penn State offense is very good as well. But I think it was one of those situations where both offensive coordinators were truly on top of their game, and both defenses just simply couldn't hang on. But this is where it comes down to it. And, Drew Aller played a great game. It was probably arguably his best game that he's had at Penn State, but he wasn't Dylan Gabriel. And at the end of the day, Oregon's offensive line was able to get just a little bit more penetration, open up a few more holes, and Oregon got it done. And, the hindsight, looking back and rewatching the game, it was never really a situation where Oregon was in danger, consistently had a 7 to 14 point lead, even though for a good chunk of that second half, especially, it kind of felt like you didn't really know which way it was going. But it's just a testament to, how good Oregon's been, and clearly their worst defensive game of the year, probably their worst defensive game since Landing's first year here. So to be able to come out on top against a top 3 team when you do not have one side of the ball working, it's just a testament to how good this team can be. And you just hope for Oregon's sake that the next time they go out on January 1st, the defense shows up a little bit more.
All right, now that you've had 24 hours to digest it, when you look at Oregon and their draw and where they sit as the number 1 seed in this new 12-team playoff, first game will be against Tennessee or Ohio State. If the higher seeds win out, they would then face Texas and Georgia to win a national championship. That's a pretty tough path for the number 1 seed.
It is. Look, it's pretty inarguable that Oregon kind of got the rough draw there, but I like what Lanning had to say. Like, the reality is, if you just have to go out and win, and if Oregon can pull this off, if everything goes chalk and they do play Ohio State and Texas and Georgia, well, you know what? It's a great year to win your first ever national championship, because there'll be absolutely no doubts. No one will be able to say that, maybe you didn't earn it because you didn't have to play this team. The road's laid out, but it's a rocky one. But I think that, the mentality that they've had all season, you really kind of feel like the fans are upset about it. But internally, inside the HDC, you kind of get the sense that the coach and players are like, all right, well, this is what we have to do. Look, they already beat Ohio State once. And the reality is, I actually don't think Ohio State makes it to the Rose Bowl. I think Tennessee is going to knock them off here in a couple weeks. But whether it's Tennessee or Ohio State, the fact that you have 22 days essentially to get healthy, get your bodies ready, and these coaches can spend the next 3 weeks preparing for both teams, whereas Ohio State and Tennessee don't have that luxury. So it's going to be it's a great situation. The playoffs, this is what we were hoping for, is, overall, the first round of games aren't quite as exciting as maybe we could have had a couple different matchups. But once we get to see these games taking place in these stadiums, these home crowds getting to experience playoff games for the first time, it's really going to kick up how special this is. And then if you're Oregon, you got to the Rose Bowl. And at the end of the day, even though it's not the ultimate goal anymore, being able to have your first playoff game inside the Rose Bowl, it's pretty special. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, if they get there, they've certainly earned it.
Well, one thing I'm certain of, we don't think these are good matchups now, but I have a feeling that we'll get a couple of those games that we don't think are going to be close now that will turn out to be barn burners, and we should get some good action in that first round. Now, you said you think Tennessee is going to beat Ohio State. Is that primarily because of the injuries that Ohio State has up front on the offensive line and the strength of the Tennessee defensive line? How do you see that matchup?
That's certainly the biggest reason. Tennessee has easily a top 3 or 4 front 7 in the entire country. Their defense is nasty. And, when the offense is going okay and Nico's playing well, they have a good offense. But I think a bigger thing is, and we're going to find out within 5 minutes of that game, what is Ohio State's mentality? Because it's easy to look and say, okay, the Michigan game is over. It didn't really end up costing them that much. They didn't get a chance to play for the Big Ten championship, but they still made the playoffs. They still get to host a game. But you have to wonder, as psychologically damaging as that game appeared to be 2 weeks ago, what is their mentality going to be coming in here? Are they going to spend the entire, their break? They basically have 3 weeks off between the Michigan game and this game. What are they doing? Are the players focused? Is Ryan Day, how is he going to handle this? Having this game be at home, I think it was Kirk Herbstreit yesterday, had a really good point. He goes, for Ohio State, this may have been better to be on the road because that fan base is ready to strike. There is no coach in the country that is on a hotter seat right now than Ryan Day. And if that game starts out a little bit slow or Tennessee jumps out ahead, you kind of wonder, what's that fan base going to do? What's that stadium going to be like? So when you factor in Ohio State's injuries on the offensive line, which unfortunately for them, they're not going to get better. All the guys that are out for the year. Then you add in Tennessee's defense and then a Buckeyes team that is mentally wounded at the very least and potentially damaged. I see it being too much, and I think Tennessee comes out of there. But that's probably going to be the most competitive game, although I am really intrigued by this Indiana-Notre Dame game to see, Indiana's first crack at having a big game against Ohio State didn't go well. What can they do now on a national stage? And this to me strikes me as the kind of game that Kirk Cinetti really will get them ready for. Obviously, it's the biggest game in program history. That one I'm keeping my eye on, though, is one of those that could be that sneaky game that you talk about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those games play out. The way I would sell it to my players at Ohio State, I mean, if you look at their schedule and the way they played throughout the year, they played one bad game against Michigan. They almost beat Oregon. They were one play away, and they won the rest of their games. So I agree that was a horrendous loss to Michigan. But if you look at the rest of the season, the way they played, especially the way they bounced back and won at Penn State, I mean, all in all, they've played pretty good football this year.
They have. And again, it's one of those situations where they should be there. But as 18 to 22-year-old kids, the portal's open. They've been sitting there. They'll been sitting there at that point for 3 weeks listening to how bad the season ended. I'm just saying that's a subplot that I think is a really big one going into that game. All things considered, if both teams show up with their A game, I think I would certainly give the edge at that point to Ohio State. But until we see that, that's why I'm leaning Tennessee to that point. Like I said, also with the defense, but again, night game at the Shoe, first playoff game ever there. It's going to be a good one.
Well, one thing for certain about Oregon, they've got the best quarterback in the tournament, do they not? I mean, it's Dylan Gabriel and nobody else, right?
Yeah, this year especially. I mean, to watch guys like Carson Beck fall off and now be injured and not playing, and Quinn Ewers is certainly either never progressed or regressed, however you want to look at it. And that's the thing is, you look at these potential opponents for Oregon down the road, we'll say there specifically, does Quinn Ewers scare you? Absolutely not. Does Georgia's situation, whether it's Carson Beck or the freshman that came in, scare you? Absolutely not. So at the end of the day, in football, the most important position, Oregon clearly does have the number one quarterback in the tournament. There's no question about that. And then you just hope that the rest of the roster has been built up enough to hang with it. And, that there's a real part of you that if you're an Oregon fan, you don't necessarily want to play Georgia because we know what happened the last time. But talk about coming full circle where you might have a chance to play them in the same stadium that you played in 3 years ago. And your team is clearly better, twice, 3 times as good as you were back then. And Georgia is definitely a step down. So you feel like the roster-wise, you're a lot more even. And now this year, where you're coming in, remember, that was Bo Nix's first game at Oregon. We didn't know what he could do. He was coming off of his Auburn tenure where he was sort of looked at as a bust. But now you're coming in the opposite situation where you have a full year under Gabriel, his final game, that would be his final game ever. So a lot of things would have been different than the last time they played, and I think that would be a perfect bow to cap off this season. But, back to your original point, it's Gabriel, and then I'm trying to think right now who would be the second, probably
Sam
Curtis
Levitt.
York at Indiana or Levitt. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's Sam Levitt. And by the way, I solved an Oregon Duck mystery over the weekend when I was watching Arizona State take on Iowa State. I had thought, because I could never figure out, how can you have Justin Herbert and he looks worse from one year to the next at Oregon? I thought it might be Marcus Arroyo, and I really kind of leaned that direction. But upon further review, Marcus Arroyo has gone to Arizona State, and he's got Sam Levitt, a freshman, at 24 touchdowns and 5 picks, one of the most efficient players in the game, playing at a high level. And he got Cam Skattebo schemed up for over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. I now know the answer to that question. It's Mario Cristobal. It has to be.
Look, when he hired Joe Moore going into the 2020 season, that was viewed as arguably the best hire of that entire year. Joe Moore had coming off of, his tenure at Akron wasn't great, but his time at Penn State's offensive coordinator, this guy was looked at as a genius, an offensive mastermind, and he comes in and just everything completely shuts down. So, yeah, I love bashing Mario for a lot of reasons, and now that he's been gone a few years, it's so obvious. But when you take the blinders off a little bit, he just held back that entire offensive staff, whether it was the players or the coaches. And look what's happened in Miami. He's on his third coordinator already.
Exactly.
And so good for Marcus Arroyo. It's great to see him that kind of success, and then having two Oregon coordinators running that ship is kind of fun to watch.
No, it is, and that's why I love younger coaches like Lanning or Dillingham, who they bring in these assistants, Joel, and they allow them to call the game and do their job. So when Arroyo called that 4th down and 1 play early in the game against Iowa State, he had the freedom to do that, and even if the coach is a little bit nervous about the call, he believes in his guys and empowers them to do that. And that's got to be pretty intoxicating as a coordinator to be able to have the freedom to call the game based on what you put the work in during the week. I love that.
Yeah, the best CEOs, the best coaches, the best supervisors, they hire the people that they think do the job, and then you get out of their way and let them do it. You're exactly right. It was great to see. And Arroyo's still a young guy, even though it feels like he's been around now for a while. So he's got a bright future, and hopefully this will help sort of rehabilitate him, and he can get back into the head coaching gig if he wants it again.
All right, in this playoff field, Joel, along with Oregon, how many teams do you think can legitimately win the championship? We got Oregon. They're clearly one. I think Georgia would be number 2. Who else do we put on that list? Is Texas on the list?
Texas is because of their defense, and they're defensively, they're still a team that does not make me very excited to play them. That they are fast, they are physical. If they don't have Kelvin Banks at left tackle on offense, you saw this past week just how different they look. And like I said, Quinn Ewers he's just not the answer at quarterback. I don't know if Sark would have the stones to go with Arch Manning, but a big thing there is Kelvin Banks, and even if he's back but not all the way healthy, that line can be had. So Texas is fringe, but I still put them in that discussion because of their defense. I like this Notre Dame team a lot, and I think a lot of people have not gotten over that Northern Illinois loss and still look at that as, well, yeah, they went 11-1. They absolutely boat raced most of their opponents the rest of the season, and I think sometimes we forget these teams get better. Oregon is a much better team now than they were in that same weekend when they played Boise State and barely escaped. Maybe not defensively after this past weekend, but I still think that was a bit of an aberration. But teams get better, and Marcus Freeman is a great coach, and Notre Dame is not a team that is a pushover by any stretch. So I would put them in there, and this one some people might, roll their eyes at this. I still think Arizona State, while they're not anywhere near the top 3 or 4 teams in the trenches, that is still a team that when they're playing as confident as they are, and you have a guy like Dillingham calling the shots in Arroyo like we just talked about, there's something to be said for a team that plays without fear and at the confidence they are. And they also have a lot of skill, a lot of talented skill players. So while they might be, very much in the back of the pack in the offense and defensive lines going into this tournament, I still would not put it past them to win 2 or 3 games. And, if they caught fire and made it to the championship game, I don't know if I would necessarily be surprised. So I think it's a clear hierarchy of Oregon, Georgia. I put Notre Dame up there. I don't put Ohio State and Tennessee, even though they're very good. And I think Penn State, I think we saw their best shot on Saturday. And Kolenecki, as good as he called that game, I don't know if they can replicate that again because I think they've just fully unloaded everything they have. So Penn State was impressive. They're very good. I still put them also just a tiny tier below Oregon, Georgia, and for me, Notre Dame.
It's great. This is what I love about college football. You mentioned Arizona State. The cool thing is that, in his efforts for recruiting, Kenny Dillingham is making an effort to have this Texas to Tempe, pipeline because they got a number of players from Texas on the team. What a great opportunity for them to potentially match up with Texas in the Peach Bowl when you're trying to hit that state for recruiting. And if they put up a good performance and let's say they go out there and beat the Longhorns, you've got a lot of players on the team from Texas. You're talking to a lot of recruits in Texas. Like, that's a great opportunity to put on that type of show on that stage, and what that can do for you in the future for recruiting. That's huge for Dillingham.
We've long said that is, that's the joke, is Arizona State is this sleeping giant, but they've been sleeping for 100 years. They just never seem to find it and put it together. But when you factor in the stadium, the university, the location, the weather, the metropolis around there of Phoenix and that area and how much it's growing, now he can sell all of that stuff that you've always been able to sell. And now he could do winning as well. So you're absolutely right. It's like, Oregon does. They do like, Cali Flock. And, they do all these where you're trying to get into these other states and recruit guys. And Tempe to Texas is the latest one. And you're right. Because for so long, and because Arizona State's doing it on this type of year, it's getting attention now. So maybe some of these recruits that weren't even letting Dillingham in the door, now that door's been kicked open a little bit, and he can get in there and he can start selling division. So not only the kids that they may have been in play for before, do they become a bigger threat? This is going to get them in front of more kids that they would not have been able to in the past. So great for him. It's starting to wonder now again, how good was the Pac-12 the past few years, and we just didn't know about it.
I know.
And when they beat up each other, maybe it was because there was a lot of good teams and not just mediocre beating up on mediocre like the national narrative seemed to be.
All right, Joel. Joel Gunderson with us here on the Rip City Drive. Dude, I love talking ball with you, man. Enjoy the next couple of weeks and get geared up for January 1st. It's going to be awesome.
Take a breath next weekend, relax a bit, and then let's kick it off after that.
All right, man. Sounds good. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for the time, Joel.
Sounds good, Chad. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Joel Gunderson. He thinks Oregon in a good position, and they are. Boy, these games are going to be great. These games are going to be great. Just looking at the bracket right now. Clemson in Texas, December 21st down in Austin. That'll be a 1 o'clock kick on TNT. Tennessee, Ohio State, December 21st, 5 o'clock on ESPN and ABC. SMU and Penn State on the 21st, 9 o'clock in the morning. They got the crappy TV slot on TNT. And then Indiana and Notre Dame on December 20th. This is going to be the first game. This is going to be on ESPN and ABC. It's the first home game for Notre Dame that hasn't been on NBC in like a billion years. Those are your first-round matchups. And we got Army and Navy coming up this weekend. This will be the greatest Army-Navy matchup in the history of my life. Army just won the conference championship, and Navy's had one heck of a season, so that's going to be a great game. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rip City Drive with Chad Doing. Tomorrow, Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. I've got 2 pairs of tickets for Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets taking on the Trailblazers. Listen to me tomorrow at 4 and 5 for your chance to win. All right, let's go out to the phones. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Oregon will play in the Rose Bowl coming up on January 1st. Let's go out and talk with a big Duck fan, Bruce in Portland. Bruce, I would imagine for you this entire season's had to been a blast, my friend.
Hey, Chad. Yeah, it's so far a dream come true. I mean, we've got the right coach. We've got the right team. We've got, everything's fallen into place. We had the right schedule. And everybody bitches, oh, yeah, the schedule. It's like, well, you just play the schedule, that you're given. So, I mean, and they took care of business when they had to.
And they did so with 8 straight weeks in conference without a bye week, which is impressive, too.
Right, and we're the first team ever to beat Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in 1 year. I know Michigan's down, but it doesn't matter. You go to the big house, you win there. That's a big deal, in my opinion. This whole playoff thing, I mean, I know everybody's bitching about who ended up where, this, that, and the other. I mean, it's the first year, so a lot of teams are in. It's good that 12 teams are in. I think they got the 12 teams right. I think in the future what they need to do is they need to seed it like they do basketball. The conference champs get in, and then they reseed everybody once everybody's in.
I agree.
The number one seed should obviously have the easiest path to the final. There aren't really any easy paths either. And like Lanning said, you just go about your business. We got to beat the best to be the best, right?
That's true. But if we're being honest, Bruce, Oregon's got the most brutal path. There's no question about it. They're going to have to beat the 3 teams that have the best odds to win the championship after Oregon. Like, that's for the number 1 seed. That's a tall ask. You know what I'm saying? It's brutal.
Yeah, I agree. It's either Ohio State or Tennessee for your first round game.
No, it's awful.
Give me
plus,
a break.
Penn State. Here's what really ticks me off. Number 1, Ohio State beat Penn State in the regular season, but yet because Penn State got into the Big Ten title game, they're ranked ahead of them in the rankings. But for Oregon, they just beat Penn State in the Big Ten title game, and Penn State's got an easier path to the semi than Oregon. That's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying after the victory, you want to win the Big Ten title, but it's like we would have been better off losing, based on how things turned out yesterday with the selection committee.
Yeah, how would you feel with how would you feel with getting like SMU at home or whatever? That's not so bad. But you're right, you have to beat the best to be the best. But the problem is that when you got to go through 3 teams like that to win a championship, it just the margin for error is much less. Let's just put it that way.
Correct. And we all know, if it's Ohio State, how difficult it is to beat a team of that caliber twice in 1 year, even with Will Howard at the helm and Ryan Day, on the sideline. I think every team in is vulnerable, especially after watching the games last weekend. I mean, neither Georgia or Texas were that impressive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Texas, I know one thing. They're not going to win a championship with Quinn Ewers at quarterback. They've got a great defense. Georgia, we know what Georgia's about. They've got issues with their offensive line and their offense. Their quarterback play has been inconsistent this year, but their defense, their front 7 is phenomenal. Oregon, their rush defense is not, top-notch. I mean, every team's got flaws, but that's okay. That adds intrigue to this tournament because there's no team we can point to like in years past where it's like, that's the dominant force. They're going to win the championship. This is a little bit more of we're seeing parity. That's what it is. It's parity.
Yeah, with NIL and the transfer portal, I mean, the days of a dominant school, I think, are over. You're going to get a handful that can afford NIL. You're going to get the dominant dozen or so probably from here on out. Somebody's got to step in, though, and rein in the NIL thing. It is truly the Wild West. And it's just whoever has the deepest pockets here at this point. It's the haves and the have-nots.
Phil Knight is living out Paul Allen's ultimate dream, which is to have an uncapped sport where you can just spend as much money as you want. It's unbelievable.
Right. Hopefully it happens this year. I have a good feeling. I think this is the Ducks' year. We've got the right team. Our defense is solid, except you wouldn't know that watching Penn State run all over us. But, I was listening to Anthony Newman after that game, and his little insight. He said Penn State's offense essentially had a different formation almost every play, and I don't care how good your defense is, it's impossible to game plan for something like that. Those guys had 2 top-notch runners, and 3 if you want to count the quarterback, plus their tight end.
Yeah,
I mean,
tight end's the best in the country.
Yeah. Your previous caller said, I don't think Penn State can ever replicate what they did to us. I mean, Oregon saw their best, gave it their, saw Penn State's best shot, and we were able to handle it. Thank God Gabriel is on, and Tez, man, it's awesome to see him back.
No, it's great. But you know
Chad,
what? But you know how games work. They all take on every game takes on a life of its own, just like the Wisconsin game. Neither team could score, but it became a defensive battle. Sometimes you get in games where, the offenses are going to take charge and you have to win a higher scoring game. But that's the beauty of Oregon. They can win in a variety of different ways. Now, which trip you going on? You going down to the Rose Bowl?
I'm going to the Rose Bowl. I booked my flight Saturday night. Our ticket allotment comes up Wednesday. We got a handful of us that are going down. So
Did
yeah,
you get good ticket prices on the plane flights? You get cheap flights down?
I got round trip $500. I'm flying into San Diego. I got a friend down there, and we all kind of rendezvous there, stay with him, drive up, that morning.
That's great, man. I'm pumped, dude. I'm pumped for you because I know how much this means to you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be cool, and regardless of our opponents there at the Rose Bowl. I went to Atlantic for the Georgia-Oregon game a couple of years ago. That didn't end up so well, but that's a cool stadium, man. Mercedes-Benz is phenomenal. Pro football stadium. There's a big difference between that and the college stadium. That's for sure.
Doesn't part of you? Isn't there a piece of you that wants the Ohio State rematch?
Yeah, just to shut their fans up more than anything.
Because beating them twice would be beautiful. Again. Yeah, it'd be beautiful. Not once, but twice. And then you could tell those Buckeye fans to shut their pie holes.
Right. Like, you guys aren't so entitled, It's not, it's always something else. It's not the fact that we played a better game than you. It's always something else, right?
That's so good. Yeah, that place will be packed, man. If it's Ohio State, there'll be a ton of Oregon and Ohio State fans there. That place will be packed with $100,000. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool venue down there. Nice weather, one would hope, and we'll see. I mean, Oregon's probably the one team though that is healthy. Their team is in pretty good shape. Obviously, they can use the rest, but they haven't really lost anybody for the season like some of the teams that are left have.
No, and as well as I do, health is one of the most important factors in winning a national championship. You got to have your guys.
Yep. And they got a good coaching staff. Lanning's finally settled on turning the reins over like your guests have said. Turn the reins over to your assistants. Let them coach, unlike Cristobal.
Yeah.
And
Mario.
that's why you hire these guys. Any good company can tell you that. Let your managers manage.
Yeah. No, it's true, man. Well, Bruce, man, congrats, dude. Have fun, and I can't wait to hear from you after the Rose Bowl. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, thanks, man. Maybe I'll try and talk to you from down there if you're on the air.
Hit me up, dude. Call in. Yes, please.
Yeah, will do, man. All right. You have a good Christmas if I don't talk to you before then.
All right. Merry Christmas, Bruce. There's Bruce, dude. A longtime Duck fan. Raider Mike, you've got the final word on the show, my friend. Fire away.
How you doing, bro? How you
well.
been?
Very well. How about you?
I'm bored out of my mind. In the land of Billy Bob, Brock, and Buford. I'm looking around this place. I can't wait till somebody says, you got a pretty mouth. Deliverance all over again. It's that kind of place. But no, I am wearing Oregon green basically every day.
Nice.
I do have my Raider hat on.
Good. Let those Georgia fans know.
These Bulldogs, you're going down. The whole country's going down. Since 1939, we've waited, Chad. It's time. Closing time. It just is.
Dude, that's right.
Anyway, bro.
No, you're the best, man. I love you, buddy. Just be careful what you say down there. You're going to be buried in the backwoods of Georgia down there. That's my man, Raider Mike, who's doing the hard work for FEMA down there. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter, Michael Allen Harrison. Big thanks to him for stopping by and joining us. And then also the very special guest that we had in studio, Elena, and she was terrific. Joel Gunderson. We're back tomorrow, Rip City Drive at 3. Don't forget, we'll have Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. I'll have tickets to give away for the Nuggets at 4 and 5. And we'll do it tomorrow. Have a good night.